everybody. My name is Alysha, and I'm a Psych NP, and I own my own private practice. And I have a program where I also teach other Psych NPs how to open private practices as well. And so I'm doing this series where I'm interviewing some of my mentees just to show their journeys so that people that are curious about what is possible can hear not just what I've been through, but also what other Psych NPs have been through when they start to go solo. So today I have Amy and Brian with me. Amy and Brian are both my mentees. Amy's a Psych NP, Brian's a marketing guy, and well, more than that, in the private practice, he's doing a lot. So they're a duo that started Aloha Psychiatric. And so I'll have you guys introduce yourself and then we'll get into it.
And I'm Amy Barrymore. We started Aloha Psychiatric together in January. And
I'm Brian. I do a little bit of everything with Amy, other than see patients. That's the hard part. And then I do another job as well, so it keeps us busy for sure.
Awesome. So where is your practice and what kind of patients do you guys see?
so we are in Joplin, Missouri, and we see people from the ages of about 5 and up.
And so just any chief complaint is fine. Like you're pretty open. You've seen a lot of different.
I came from a walk-in clinic where I saw patients of all ages. So we continued that, and we see patients of all ages too, of all diagnoses.
Awesome. And then what was your date of launch? It was January of 24?
Yes, middle of January.
Okay. And when did you start thinking about opening a practice? So how long was the thinking stage to opening?
September.
Yeah, probably around September is when we really started being serious about it.
Okay. Yeah. Good. And then what were some of the steps to starting your practice that you thought were what were some of the harder things in the startup phase that you experienced?
Probably more along the credentialing lines and making sure we have the right professional support. So lawyers and accountants and all that sort of stuff. I've done a leadership class, and so I made a lot of contacts there. So it was really easy to go find the lawyers and the accountants. But when it comes to the credentialing, it's altogether different. We did go with Alma to kind of get it started, which is a big help, and they're really easy to work with. So that's kind of nice. And then from some of Amy's other contacts, we started working on other insurance companies that Alma doesn't do.
Mm-hmm.
It was good to know people in advance.
Absolutely. Yeah. What made you choose Alma? There's always this question of like Alma, Headway, Grow Therapy. What stood out to you about Alma? Why did you want to work with them?
I think part of it was just Alma's a little bit bigger in this area. I
Uh-huh.
think that one's a little bigger than the other. And when we did our discussion with them, they were able to tell us that they could get us credentialed with a handful of insurance companies within a couple of months. So that allowed us to start very quickly with them. And then we also liked the fact that they reimburse very quickly too. So we didn't have to wait for the insurance companies to reimburse them before we started seeing a paycheck.
Yes. Good. Okay. That's helpful.
I think the other part too with that was there's always that question of who does the patient belong to? Does it belong to Headway or Alma, or does it belong to us?
Yes.
With Alma, they were very clear that it's still our patient.
Good.
Sure, because at some point, if we decide we want to grow and add somebody on, obviously we can't use Alma, so we'll have to do all of our own credentialing anyway.
Yes. When you start to become a group practice. Yeah. That's good to know, because I know there's been some question and I think maybe there's been some changes over time, or there's always this question of whose patient is it? So that's encouraging to hear that Alma is very clear on that stance. Good. good, especially when, you know, you, like you said, you might grow, you might give that patient to an employee, you know, it could, that could affect things. Okay, that's good to know. So for people wanting to think about, you know, Alma versus Headway, it's really like a big consideration of where you physically are, you know, and how present they are in that area. Okay. Okay, good. What went into the decision of taking cash versus insurance? What went into that decision?
So just from talking to people, we had heard that the cash market in this area anyways wasn't real big. Even when looking at the practices that I'd worked in before, we didn't have a lot of cash patients.
Yeah.
So for us, in order to grow it fast enough, we knew we were going to need to take insurance.
Good, good. So you did some research just in the area and talked to other practices, and yeah, that's a big one, is kind of like seeing if there's other cash practices in the area and if they're successful, and yeah.
Where our practice is at, it's not very affluent, so there's not a lot of money there.
Sure.
So there's a lot of people that can't afford to do it. Now, you know, there's a lot of therapists in the area that do only cash pay. Now, I guess they do okay, but
Hmm.
it's, I think part of it too is we just want to be able to see patients. So
Yes, it's also, yeah, how fast you want to grow, what your goals are, like the volume that you want to see. I know, like Amy, you're saying you have multiple jobs, Brian has multiple jobs, you know, your ultimate goal is to have this be, you know, your family business that's like, just that's your one job, and get that going fairly quickly. So, yeah. Yeah, there is a bit of trial and error with cash. It does take some time to try to see if it's going to work. And so insurance, definitely, if that's a goal of yours that you feel like is good for you guys, then you're definitely that for sure is gonna help you grow very, very fast. Yeah. Good, good. What were some of the things during your startup that you thought were the easiest? Or some things that you thought, oh, that wasn't as hard as, you know, I expected?
I think in the beginning I was a little bit concerned. Are we really going to be able to do this, just the two of us? Am I
Yeah.
really going to be able to bring someone in and get their vitals done and do their assessment and check them out and get them rescheduled and not miss anything?
Yeah.
And I think that being a small office and it just being us, it was a little bit easier than I expected it to be. You
Yeah.
start doing the vitals, people start talking, so it's not really like you're losing that time.
Yes.
I was a little surprised too how, you know, we wanted to have an office that people could come into. And it was a little bit easier finding someplace than I thought it was going to be. I thought we'd be looking for quite a while, and what, 2 weekends we
Right?
were signing on the dotted line and had a really good deal. So it helps when you can find someplace quick. And there's just, you know, we see both telehealth and you know, in the office. But we see, I think, more in office most of the time than we do telehealth.
Definitely so.
That's awesome. Okay, so people prefer it.
Yes.
At least in your area. I think that there's trends of, you know, like in Los Angeles, I don't think anyone wants to be seen in person because of all the traffic. But in your area, you know, it just like if they live right by the office, actually, I have a couple of patients that can walk to my office from their home. I see them in person, you know, I guess just proximity and how easy it is to get to your office. Good.
You're surprised also the number of people that, you know, we always ask, how did you hear about us? And like, well, we saw your sign when we drove by.
Yes.
So that was helpful. Our sign's bright green and it's noticeable when you drive by it. So it is kind of nice to have an office from that perspective. We really
Yeah.
done no marketing. No,
Yeah.
other than Facebook, Instagram, we really haven't had to do anything else. Well, we
Wow.
do psychology today, I guess.
Yeah. That's actually really great. That's a great if you're okay with having a brick and mortar, I think that's a great way to get your name out there. It does the marketing for you. Like I'm the same way. My brick and mortar says my name on the front. It's not like it doesn't stand out too much, just because my landlord, like, just the way it's kind of painted kind of gray. So, but I have had people, yeah, say the same thing, that they were driving by and saw it and then Googled. Yeah, yeah. So that's good. So marketing wise, yeah, I'm really curious what so you said that And with insurance, it takes less marketing than a cash-based practice, which is really good. So you guys did psychology today, you have your sign in the front, you have Instagram and Facebook. Um, anything else? Like Alma? Yeah, Alma.
Mhm.
Has a spot where people can request to see you.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, they have like on their website, they make you a profile, right?
And
And
then
then any,
Google Workspace is the only other spot.
what was that?
Google Workspace is the only other spot.
Yeah.
So people can see us online. So
Yeah. Like a Google My Business.
mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So if they look up, mental health in my area, you'll pop up. Yeah, because exactly, because of the location. How about, did you do any like network marketing, like reaching out to therapists or letting people know that you're in town?
So we did that a little bit. We made up a flyer that we took out to several of the different doctors in town, a handful of the therapists, just letting them know, hey, this is us. We're here. If you need anything, let us know. Brian took one of the doctor's office's donuts one day.
Awesome.
Yes. And we got a phone call probably 30 minutes after he had dropped them off, wanting to know more about us, and that was a nice ad.
Yes.
And that clinic has sent us a lot of patients.
Mhm.
So that one really paid off. And so
Yeah.
about time to feed them again, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That can make such a difference, like of all the fancy marketing things that are out there, I think that's one of the best. Just like seeing someone that's in town that might see the same patients as you, taking them a snack, taking them flyers, and then it's like a little bit more personal than, other things. Like there's more complex things that you can pay a lot of money for, like Google ads or, but that for a small business, I mean, it can be a lot of money to compete with all of the other ads for mental health services that are out there, especially the large platforms. They really kind of take over the large, like, tech company funded platforms. They seem to take all of the first pages of Google, so any other marketing things that were helpful for you guys?
We do have a web page as well.
Yeah.
We made it ourselves. We just use Wix, and
Good.
it's cost effective and
Mm-hmm.
pretty simple. So
Yeah.
that was as well. But other than that, word of mouth, really.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. I wanted to ask you too, with your brick and mortar, some small, when you're first starting up, I'm curious, some small businesses have been nervous to have a brick and mortar because of the rent that they're going to have to pay, and just like, they might not have as much money coming in, and how are they going to pay the rent, and should they go small, should they go big and grow into it? What was your kind of plan and theory about getting a brick and mortar?
You were planning on going really small and
Mhm.
just having a space. And
Mhm.
then we realized that there was a building that just happened to be a little bit outside of town that was a lot larger, that was
Mhm.
less expensive than the bigger clinics that were in town closer to the hospital.
Yeah.
And even being a little bit further out of town, I don't think it's made a difference.
Yeah.
But it's definitely made it more
And
cost friendly.
it gives us room to grow. We could bring on, a nurse and another provider with ease, and still have enough space. And it was definitely, it was a couple $100 a month cheaper than a lot of the other places were. And when she says out of town, we're talking 5 blocks.
Yeah, no problem.
It's right there. So it's not like we're way out of town, but
Yeah.
I hadn't even seen it on the listings when we were looking. We actually got a realtor to help us find some places, and we just found her because she had a couple places listed. And so
Yeah.
she's, well, I can show you other places. And we're like, okay. And so she did, and she happened to have this one from a friend of hers, and it turned out really, really well.
Good.
And it happens to be just down the street from a middle school and an elementary school. So
Awesome.
we get a lot of traffic on that road during the day.
Yes. That's the same with my office. Yeah, I'm right between two elementary schools. So yeah, there's kids walking through. Yeah, and even some kids that walk to my office after school. Yeah, which is good. Good. Okay, so you picked a good spot. And yeah, I used a realtor for mine too. When I first started, I wasn't really sure who to use. Do I go on like Craigslist, or do I actually, when I first started, I subleased from a friend. I just used her office like one day a week. But then when I wanted to get my own spot, yeah, it was nice. Funny enough, I thought, I had never looked into commercial real estate at all before this. So I thought that realtors were only selling commercial real estate, not like working with like leases and stuff. And so that, as silly as that sounds, I learned. And that was really helpful because, she had multiple offices.
They also have those extra fees that you don't ever hear about until you start looking at commercial either, right?
Right,
Oh,
right.
this is the price, this is what it is. And you got your closing costs, but everybody knows about that. But with commercial, there were some other fees, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about this one. What's this?
Yes.
So
Yes.
she's really good to help us with that too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Good. Okay, so you started up, and then oh, I have another question for you, Amy. I can't remember. Are you dual certified?
No.
No.
Just-
Okay. Okay. All right. I thought every once in a while when someone's dual certified, I'll ask them if they're using both or, Okay, let's see. So so then now let's talk about post launch. So once you started your practice and opened it, what did that look like?
So the
First month.
first week was a little scary. I think we had 2 or 3 patients scheduled. But we used that time to go around and talk to doctors in between.
Good.
By about the second month, we're like, okay, I think this is gonna work.
Yes.
It took a month of, oh my goodness, we can pay the rent, but I'm not gonna make anything. Are we really gonna get this to grow as fast as we want it to?
Yeah.
By the third month, we were really confident that, okay, we really can do this. We are doing this.
Yes.
And then it's just continued to grow since then.
Good.
We see probably 30 to 35 of our own patients a week. So just the afternoons. And then in the mornings, of course, she's got her contract work that she's seeing other patients as well. The contract work, it's interesting. It's kind of helped us. One of the insurance companies that we're really struggling with getting set up with is Blue Cross Blue Shield. And this area has a bunch of Blue Cross Blue Shield patients. So the place that she's contracted work, she actually is credentialed for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so we just send them to them, and she can still see them and can still see them in our office. And the understanding is that once we have it, they will pop over to us.
Nice. That's
So
that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes it easy. Good. Good. Okay. So you were open, you were building. Now you're at month 6. How many patients do you have now?
Probably around 200.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that feel to you, Amy, as the only provider? Does that feel heavy? Does it feel like, oh, does it feel like, oh, I've had jobs where I had to see, that many? Is it no big deal? How do you feel?
It's a little different. So, the place that I worked before, I was working 10-hour shifts, and sometimes I saw 30 in a day.
Yeah.
I had a lot of help too, though, right? I had nurses that were doing the vitals. I had people checking them in.
Yeah.
That was heavy, but it was a different kind of heavy. Now the heavy is, I want to start someone on a new medication, and the medication requires a prior authorization. Well, there's not anyone to do that except for one of the 2 of us.
Yeah.
So some weeks it feels a little heavier than others.
Yeah.
It kind of comes in waves because I feel like, in the beginning, every single patient was new.
Yes.
And so it was, 30 new patients is really exhausting.
Yes, it is.
But now it's getting to where it's more, 7, 8 new patients a week, which is a lot more manageable.
It's doable.
Not that feeling like, oh my gosh, every patient is new and we're starting from scratch.
Yeah. So that will feel better. Yeah. So that'll feel better as you continue to go on. Yeah.
It's already getting better. That 3-month mark when everybody was new, and we were starting to really build. That month was hard, but it's already getting easier just because now so many of the patients are follow-ups.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Good.
The summer months are usually a little slower around here anyway.
Yeah.
And so once school starts back up again, we'll actually go visit. We're actually looking for a house closer to the office. And the realtor that we spoke with, she happens to work for one of the school districts. And she's like, oh, we would love to have some more people. And so we'll
Uh,
visit the schools early on in the school year to say, hey, we are here. And that'll probably also bring in quite a bit more business, I would assume. And then
yeah.
a fairly decent sized university in town too. So we'll hit them up as well.
Yes, yes. Another member actually, he has a lot of success doing that. He takes insurance too. He's in Arizona. And he was telling me that it's been so helpful going to the universities because a lot of schools, you know how they'll, like for undergraduate, they'll tell the students, that the student center has, like if someone's having a mental health concern, depression, anxiety, adjustment disorder, whatever, that they will allow them, like, I think they have the capacity for like 6 therapy sessions, and then they'll refer out after that. And so if you are kind of the person that they're sending out, that can be really helpful. And I don't know how it works for medication. I don't know if I remember at my school, there was a nurse practitioner that would see us, if we had a cold or a concern, even depression, anxiety. I don't know if she'll, start someone on a medication and then refer out, or how that goes, but I would assume it just is the same. They'll start someone that really needs it, but for the plan of referring out, and I would assume that that's probably why connecting with the universities can be so helpful, right? Yeah. Yeah, good. What school is that you guys are close to?
Missouri Southern State University.
Yeah. Yeah. That one's pretty big, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good size. And then Pitt State's fairly close as well.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So I remember when we were first meeting, you were trying to decide between a couple of states that you were pretty close to. And one had a collaborator, one you needed a collaborator and one you didn't. What went into that decision deciding, which state to go with? And I know you went with the one where you were going to have a collaborator as opposed to one that was full independent. What went into that decision?
Initially, I 100% wanted to be in a state that was fully independent. I
Mhm.
didn't want to have a collaborator and to have to find a collaborator and figure out how to make all of that work. But when we actually started looking, what we were finding is that if you cross the state line, which is only how far from where we're at,
8 miles.
8 miles from the city that we're in, you ran into the issue that there weren't a lot of big cities.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of nurse practitioners that lived in the city that we're practicing in that went across the state line to open their practice because they wouldn't have to have a collaborator. So
Yeah.
the competition was actually going to be a lot more in a smaller city by going a little bit further away.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, so more people having the same idea, doing that same thing, but less people. Okay. So do they mostly have smaller practices then that you were seeing? Yeah. Yeah.
And several of them we've noticed they work out of multiple offices. So they might have 3 different cities that they go to in order to have enough patients to sustain their business.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And I'm getting the sense that your area likes in person. So it might not make sense for them to market across the state because maybe just people aren't as used to tele.
Missouri has a lot of different laws than what some of the other states have. And
Oh,
you have to, it's really hard to be a telemed provider and not live in Missouri.
wow.
Pretty much have to live here if you want to see people telemed.
Interesting. Okay. And so live there, and do you have to physically be there at the time of the appointment too?
I don't think that you actually have to be, but you have to be licensed and your main area of practice has to be Missouri. Like if
Yeah.
I was in Florida and wanted to see patients in Missouri, it would be really hard to get a license to be able to do that.
Got it. Got it. That's interesting. That's interesting. So that's all good considerations that you were able to, it sounds like you spent a lot of time like kind of really knowing the NP practice laws and like what other NPs in your area were doing, which is incredibly smart. Yeah.
Well, and it was a little bit harder going down the route of opening a practice in Missouri because there's a couple of different health systems where we're at, but both of those systems are tied to a hospital, and they don't allow their providers to collaborate with people outside of that system because they need those physicians to collaborate with their nurse practitioners. So finding a collaborating physician is a little bit difficult around here.
Right.
They have to find an independent physician that's willing to do it.
Yes. Yes. I was thinking about that because some large systems here now are not allowing doctors to collaborate with any NPs. Yeah. Outside of their and even sometimes they won't allow them to have jobs outside of their system because then those jobs would require collaboration, and so they kind of just say the doctor can't collaborate with anyone. Outside of their workplace.
Yeah, and in Missouri, if you do have an in-office facility, your collaborator has to be within 75 miles of you.
Physically. Okay. Yeah.
So
That's
that
you have a what? If you have an in-office facility, if you're doing in-person visits?
Mhm.
Wow. That is really specific.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's not like you can just pick a big city in Missouri and say, oh, I'm going to have my collaborator there, because they have to be within 75 miles of you.
Wow. Does being telehealth fix that?
Sort of. You can apply for an exception.
Uh-huh.
It's fully telemed, and you have the ability for your collaborating physician to go online telemed and see the patient too.
Okay. Okay.
Have to have that in Missouri. You have to have that ability for the collaborating physician to be able to see the patient if the patient requests it.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. If the patient requests it to see, to have a visit with the doctor. Yeah. Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Okay. Okay. And then when we had started working together, one of your main concerns was a non-compete that you had. Walk me through how you work through that, because I know that there's a lot of nurse practitioners that are worried about either like getting a job with a non-compete and wondering how they'll navigate it when they want to eventually start a practice, or they're currently in a non-compete. So what was helpful for you figuring that out?
I had a non-compete. My non-compete said that I had to be at least 50 miles away from any of the practices that facility owned.
Yeah.
And so basically I just made sure that I picked some place that was 50 miles away.
Mhm.
We kind of drew a circle and said, okay, what are the cities outside of this 50-mile radius where I might be able to practice? And went at it from that direction.
Yeah. And your job was pretty supportive of that, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, yeah, I was able to utilize the physician that was my collaborator at the previous practice.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And so you were able to utilize him, and kind of the agreement was that you would work there too, right? Give them some hours in exchange for collaboration, which is great because it kind of solves a lot of challenges, right? Solves the collaborator, solves the non-compete.
Well, and it made it really nice too, because it's someone that I've worked with before.
Yeah.
A different level of comfort with each other when it comes to how each of us prescribes and the advice that we give each other.
That's ideal, working with someone that you like before, that knows your style and trusts you. And, that's ideal than starting a relationship over, which is good too. But I think even better if you can work with someone you've worked with before.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
There's some laws too in Missouri about you have to actually work in the collaborator's office X number of hours in the beginning as well. And
That's okay.
kind of tricky when you're 50 miles away.
Yes. Interesting. Okay. So
The first 30 days that you're practicing with a new collaborator in Missouri, you have to work with that collaborator in person. So either they're going to have to come into your clinic for a month, or you're going to have to go work in their clinic for a month.
Wow.
But since I'd already worked with this physician for several years, that made that an easy rule to follow.
Yeah. Did you have to do that at the start of your collaborative agreement, or did it just count because you had worked with them before?
It counted because I had worked with them before.
Nice. Nice. Oh, wow. That's a very interesting rule. If you're just coming into Missouri, wanting to start a practice, you don't know a doc, you know, you haven't worked there before that, and then you have to work physically with them and also ask them to, wow, that's pretty tough. That it's amazing that you were able to kind of like navigate all of those hoops to jump through to have your practice there.
Right.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Brian, what were some of the things, you know, there's a lot of people that join my group or just that do practices in general that have a supportive spouse that's doing a number of tasks, just depending on what they're good at, you know, like sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's billing, so, you know, just different experiences. What has been some of the things some of the roles that you've played, and how has that helped the practice?
I've been in a leadership role for all of my life since I was 16 years old. So all that administrative stuff I've done, and I've done
Yeah.
for. I also work for a software company.
Yeah.
Navigating software is something I'm quite used to doing, which is helpful because we are switching our EHR already. Running the other one, so we are in that process right now as well. And you know, I've done my books for as long as I can remember, and well, until Amy and I got married, and she gets to do our home finances. So before that, it was always me, so I'm used to that as well. So you know, it's stuff that I'm used to doing anyway. So you know, picking it up on the business wasn't too bad.
Too bad.
She'd prefer to not be on the phone. I don't mind to be on the phone, so I take almost all the incoming calls and all that sort of stuff as well.
That's great. That's great.
And it's really nice with him having that IT background when I'm trying to start a visit and things aren't working right, to have somebody to go grab and say, hey, I need help.
That is so helpful. Yes.
And the other part, you know, you kind of play the role of almost the security guy too, right? Because
Yes.
with brick and mortar, she would be there by herself otherwise. And so
Yes.
right there, and not small, so most people are know to behave while they're there.
Good. Good. So you sit at the front desk and good. That's so awesome. That's awesome too, because Amy, you said, I know that you work till like 6 or so. And so some times of the year it's dark.
Right.
I've noticed in my practice, and my practice doesn't have a front desk. So sometimes my husband will just kind of sit in the lobby, make sure nothing's, you know, no shenanigans, but you know, it's not too bad. I don't work too late either, but that's good. That's okay. So it's funny. I was almost thinking you were going to say like security, like computer security, like physical security. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So what are going to be, you know, a lot of people are really curious about, like, you know, when should I quit that second job, or when should I go all in, or kind of like some of these questions. What are some of your barometers for like when you quit a job, or, you know, you guys both have multiple jobs. So what's your barometer for like when you might resign, or are you thinking you'll always be at those other jobs just in a small capacity, just maybe less?
So I think it kind of depends. So
Mhm.
initially I was working 50 hours a week, and I knew it wasn't possible to open up my practice and work 5 days a week for somebody else.
Yeah.
So, but I also wasn't comfortable going several months without a paycheck, and I really didn't know how long it was going to take before I got a paycheck. So I picked up a couple of contract jobs. I'm already at the point where actually I would like to drop one of them, but when I tried to drop one, they made it more lucrative, and I decided, well, maybe I'll continue just a little bit longer. But eventually, you know, we're seeing our patients in the afternoons, where I'm doing my contract job in the morning and on the weekends. something's gonna have to give soon in order to be able to continue to take patients, because right now our afternoons are already pretty full.
Yeah. So are you gonna kind of see which one pays more? You know, if your practice pays more versus if that other job pays more and decide from there? Is that your
Practice is definitely more lucrative than the
Mhm.
contract jobs. It's just the contract job is that little bit of security. Right?
Yes.
I know for sure that I'm going to make a certain amount with one of those contract jobs, regardless of the day. Whereas with the practice, I can look at it and say, oh, you know, we have our schedule's completely full this week. Is it going to be full a month from now?
Sure.
And I think part of that is just getting that security to see that month after month, we still have more patients, not less. And
Yeah.
that would probably be the key to saying, okay, it probably doesn't make sense to continue.
Yeah.
doing
And there's a, your return is if she's happened to do some of the check-ins and she's happened to help with some of the billing and all that sort of stuff because I'm still working, you got to get to the point where you say, okay, where's that line that says, okay, Brian, you got to quit working your other 60-hour-a-week job and work this one all the time. And that's what's tough. And like our health insurance is through my employer.
Yeah.
That's another big expense that you got to think about is, oh, I'm going to lose that benefit. And we've got a vacation coming up soon. And you're like, oh, we don't get paid while we're gone. So, how many vacations do you really want to take every year, and own your own business, or do you want to
Sure.
work a couple places? So those are the kinds of the things that we're looking at is, how many vacations do we really have to take every year?
Mhm. Yeah. Thinking through that and thinking through, I don't know if this is in the future for you guys, but if you have another provider, you'll still have income, if you guys decide to hire, you'll still have it, they'd still be working. I mean, you'd make less, right? Because you're not physically seeing the patients, but I
Right.
know a lot of NPs, the way sometimes it goes is they hire more and more or hire just one more, with a full schedule, and then they start to lessen their schedule a bit because they're like balancing
Right.
what they can make in a split with another split, or if you make them W-2 either way, what you can do
Right.
that. And I think that help maybe helps future vacation time. And then looking into what so your next phase will be looking into health insurance through the business and what that looks like and what that might cost. And yeah. And then seeing the stability month to month to month to knowing that, okay, it's gonna keep happening, that's encouraging. That took me a little while to let go of other jobs. I let go of like my other job, like it took a really long time.
Uh-huh.
I just was not, I don't know why I thought for so long that for some reason, some month, no one would show up, but they do, and we provide a service that's needed. And if the patients that we have usually are going to grow, or if it dips, it won't be very long. And I have a smaller patient panel than you now, because I'm doing my mentorship also. So I kind of balance between the two. And, it might dip from people moving or, something like that, but then there's a new patient that comes in too,
Right.
builds it. Yeah. Okay. Good. So you guys are thinking of really big things like benefits. And did you see yourself eventually being able to cover those things through the practice? Or do you feel like this is kind of a good spot where you want to have that benefits through a job and then stay at the practice?
Well, I'd really like to see it through the practice.
Yeah.
It's
Possible.
the money I put toward our insurance now. Yeah, I get a little bit of a tax deduction, but I get a full tax deduction if we're doing it through the business, right? So there's some benefits to doing it that way. And when there's just two of us, your rates are going to typically be a little bit smaller because I think I've been to the doctor once this year and she hasn't been at all. It's just we just don't go.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of, that's helpful. So,
That is helpful. That's really helpful. And I remember when we were looking into it, my husband was debating if he'd work for the practice or if he'd keep his full-time job, or, what he would do. And he ended up switching jobs and loving his new role. So then that answered that question. But we looked at the healthcare that was available. And there was one, you guys, I don't think you guys have Kaiser out there, right? Okay. So there's one healthcare system that it's a healthcare system and an insurance. And that one is like the only one that was available if it's you and then like the spouse that's working. You have to have I had to have another person working at least 30 hours a week that was not a spouse to get access to all the other health insurances. So it was good. There was like one that was available. But because I had some pre-existing conditions, I was like, we're going to want, some good insurance. And not that Kaiser isn't good, but I wanted something more comprehensive. That allowed me to, like, Kaiser, you can only go within that one system for everything. And then if you have like a PPO through someone else, you can go to like any hospital in LA and they all kind of have their different benefits. But we did have to get like an admin assistant and which we do now. We have a 30-hour-a-week admin assistant, and she has healthcare through us. And it wasn't too hard because we need, usually we need admin help anyway, or maybe another provider. I mean, it could go either way for you, another provider or admin, because there's going to come a time when, 200 patients, you're going to eventually need some help. So good. I get a lot of questions about just money in general. What can you make? What's possible? What did you guys see finances wise? Did you see like a dip when you were first starting, but it was okay because you had some savings and then it started to go up? And then like, what did you see in the beginning? And then what are you seeing now?
So in the beginning, we used some savings for a bit.
Mm-hmm. Pretty common.
And then neither one of us took a check
Mm-hmm.
from the business. And then after a while, things were starting to roll along, more patients were coming in. We started paying back some of the savings from Amy.
Yeah.
And at some point we'll pay me back, and we pay Amy now every 2 weeks. We pay Amy, so that's good. And we'll get to the point where we'll give me some money here and there too. So
Good.
all I need is to be with Amy. That's all the payment I need, right?
Always. I actually really have liked working with having my husband work in the business. Honestly, I think it's nice to spend more time together. That's awesome. So do you think that now that you kind of see how much reimbursement is, how much, what's possible, when you see both of you guys going full-time in the business, do you see that as generally being more lucrative than jobs in your area?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely so.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that question a lot of like what's possible. And I think that it's important, not to kind of just like think of money only, because there's also like the flexibility. You guys are hearing Amy works 1 to 6, and you can do that. You can do whatever you want. You can work whatever hours works for you, and the patients will come. Patients are going to need appointments all the time.
Right.
So there's things that are more important than money, right? But it is nice to know that it won't be like so much lower than that you have to trade the freedom for having like so much lower than like another job in the area. And what you're saying makes sense, because when you're working for someone else, they're taking some overhead, and they're taking a cut, not just to pay overhead, but to pay themselves. So if you kind of cut the middleman out, and there can be a lot of benefit there. And then some people don't want to start their own private practice, and some people obviously want to work for someone else. And so then you can be the middleman for someone else, you
Right.
know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Where do you, probably last question, where you guys see your practice going in 2024 or maybe 2025 now that we're like almost halfway through the year? Where do you see it going in the next year?
We have a couple other insurance deals that we need to get done. And I
Yeah,
think when both of those are done, I think if we get those done in the next month or two, I really think that the business is going to boom, because the ones that we have people on the waiting list for those. They're like, as soon as you get it, call me and we'll come see you guys instead.
good.
And that's kind of nice to know. It makes you want to go get those insurances that much more. We also take Medicare and Medicaid, and we have found that that's actually been really pretty easy, and their rates are good. I mean, comparatively, they're not
Awesome.
much off of anybody else, and they're so easy to deal with, which is the part that we were really shocked by.
Mhm.
So if we
Like
can,
they'll pay you back easily, like it's not so long to wait or.
Within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
The wait time's just not nearly as long with them as it is with some of the other insurance companies. And another big difference with it is they tell you when you submit Medicaid here anyway, when you submit the claim, if you enter something incorrectly, they tell you right then that you just need to fix your claim. It's not like you have to wait for someone to send you something to say, we're not going to accept it. You know, when you hit the submit button, whether or not you're going to get the check in 2 weeks.
Wow. That's really helpful.
It is very helpful.
Okay.
Fast
Yeah.
here. Anyway.
Good.
I think that if we can bring those other ones on, it's, it's the Healthy Blues, Medicaid with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and UHC Medicaid and Medicare. It's all of those that we have to get put together. It'll really take off, because there are a lot of people we probably have 40, 50 people on that list right now.
Wow.
wanting to see us if we just had their insurance.
That's amazing. Yeah, just like boom, from 200 to 250, you know? That's amazing. That's a big jump. Good.
But
Sounds
a lot of people I talk to, like, we saw on your website, you don't have that one yet, but you're working. You have it yet. I just wanted to check. So they are watching. They are watching.
That's smart. That's smart to put it on so it's on your website, like this is coming. Oh, that's smart. That's smart to put that on. And then you're still getting those patients, coming around and
Right.
waiting for you. Good, good.
Well, and I think one of the things that I waited a little bit long to do that if I had known, I would have done a little bit sooner was Psychology Today. I
Yeah.
looked at Psychology Today, and here there weren't really a lot of psychiatrists or nurse practitioners on it. It's mostly therapists.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know if this is worth it. And then one day I just decided, it's not that much money. I'm gonna go ahead and put my profile on there and see what happens. And we get calls every week, multiple calls a week that's coming off of Psychology Today. And I just kind of miss that because, like I said, there's not a lot of psychiatric people on there.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, that's not it. This is more for therapy than it is for us, but that wasn't correct.
Yeah, I think it's starting to be more, balanced.
Yeah.
What are we gonna
I've noticed on that one is that's where you have to have somebody that can help with answering the phone.
yeah.
Psychology Today, they're gonna just hit everybody on the list, and whoever answers the call first, that's where they're gonna go.
True. It is true. Especially like if you take their insurance, they're booking an appointment, because a lot of psychiatric offices don't have the capacity for someone answering the phone. I think it was, I'm trying to remember this correctly, but I think someone in the group hired her, I think it was her neighbor that didn't have a job just to answer phones. Just to be the first one, to answer. And I thought that was pretty brilliant. That's great. Okay. So it looks
During
like,
the week, I mean, I get to it immediately, but
Sure.
I'll take phone calls on the weekends too, because it's in my pocket. So I'll call people on the weekends, and if it's Psychology Today on the weekend, almost every time I'll get them. If we
Yeah.
have so,
okay. Yeah. Like you'll answer or you'll call them back
right.
quickly. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So you're answering the phones for now. That's
Yeah.
So I know I said that was the last question, but I realized I should ask you guys another question. What did you feel was helpful about being in in my program? What was helpful about it?
I think the biggest thing was I really didn't know what I didn't know. And so it was like, yeah, we could do this, but I don't know how. I don't know how to get an attorney. We knew how to get an attorney, but we didn't know, are there certain things we need to be asking the attorney specific to what we're doing? We didn't know, what do we need to do? What are the main things that we need to be aware of? And it was a comfort level, knowing that we could go through your program and we could see, okay, here's all the things you need to consider. And several times we would see something and think, oh, I didn't even think about that. And so it was nice to know that we could go through and kind of check the boxes. Yes, we looked at this. Yes, we looked at this.
Good.
And if it's the first time you owned your own business, you don't think about all the expenses that are there. Like my background tells me that there's a lot of different a bunch of expenses out there, but until you're really sitting there and doing your own business, there's things that you forget.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Having that where you kind of got a list to say, hey, don't forget about this, don't forget about that. That was very helpful.
Well, and even things like the website. We knew we needed a website, and he's done websites before, so that was helpful. But for someone that it doesn't have an IT background, how do you get a website? Do you call somebody and pay someone to do it, or by watching your program, we thought, oh, this is something that you really can do by yourself. That is a whole lot cheaper if you choose to spend a little bit of time doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Paying for a website alone is like 5,000 to 10,000. I know that I've heard just here and there people that will do it for cheaper, but not the most common is like that range that I'm hearing. And it's like, you can totally get the job done for free. Patients are not looking for we're not graphic designers, like people aren't looking for us to hire us for our design skills. They want to know that we can help them, and that can be communicated through a templated website for sure.
Well, people sometimes can't tell if I've drawn a stick figure. Is that a person? And so in artistry, I have to hire somebody else out to go do that. And so, Wix was nice because they've got a lot of that already out there for you.
Yeah.
And it's just part of the package. So that one was really super helpful.
Absolutely. Good. So the main things that helped you guys, that's good for me to know too, because I'm always thinking of what am I going to add more of? So the checklists and the, what to expect. Yeah. There's a few checklists in there. So that sounds like that was most helpful.
And getting some ideas on things like EHRs and which one can we start with, and knowing that there were other people using them, because there's that fear too, right? Of, oh my goodness, I'm going from, working for a company that has this big fancy EHR to something a lot smaller. What if I need help? And knowing that there were other people that were using the same system increased my comfort level with saying, okay, we're gonna use this one, even if it's just temporarily, because other people are using it and it's working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that I teach, is much cheaper because, it works. Some practices have different needs as they grow. Right. And so sometimes people will switch, but generally, it gets the job done. And I think that a lot of people come into the program like wanting to buy that fancy EHR that they had used before. That's like $400 to $800 a month. And I'm like, please don't. You don't need all the bells and whistles right now,
especially not until you know where you're going to be.
Yeah.
How fast are you going to build your practice? Because the bells and whistles are nice when your practice is full. But when you're looking at, I have 3 patients on the bike, well, 3 patients is not going to pay for your EHR.
No. No, it's not. Yeah. Go with the minimal that does the job. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
And, I think that being through it going to another one, it also taught us that think about what you do all day long in your current, whether you work for somebody else or whatever. How do I do this? What do I not like? And what are the things I'd like to have? And when you're talking to different people and doing the demos, ask those questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we had originally is Practice Q, and it works great. I mean, it really does it. We really thought, if we're full at the end of the, after, a full year, then maybe we'll switch. And we're just happy to do it just a little bit earlier. We just need a few more bells and whistles. Not a lot, just a few more.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And switching EHR isn't horrible. It's like you take the patient's charts and a lot of them make, a document that you can switch over. It's nothing wild. I've done it. I did it before. Yeah. Good. Awesome. Well, thank you for the feedback. And I'm glad that it was, that being in my program was helpful for you guys. I've loved having you guys and seeing you grow and what was possible. I mean, it was always clear that you guys were going to do well, but it's nice to see it, happen.
We needed that boost though. We needed someone out there telling us, you know what, people are doing this. It really can work. This isn't an unreasonable dream that you guys have. We needed that little push.
Good.
You don't overinflate it, which I appreciate too.
Right.
What was that?
You don't overinflate it. It's not like you're going to have 20 customers your first day. No. Right? You're more realistic, and that was very helpful.
Yeah.
I'm always going to be honest, like, yes, you can do it. You're going to have to work on navigating some tough stuff, but you can do it. And it's just persistent, just being persistent and sticking with it. And you will have a lot of patience.
Yes.
But it's from growing, it's not like doors are open, boom,
Right.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad. Well, thank you so much, guys. And yeah, thank you for joining me today.